The Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Listen responsibly. G'day everyone, and welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name is Max, and today I'm joined by Flynn, except we're doing it online over Discord because someone's feeling a little bit sick.
Yeah, it's a pretty cracking start to the year. January 2nd. I immediately thought I had COVID because someone in my house has COVID at the moment, but testing negative at the moment, so I think it's just a cold or a bad flu. But good start to the year. Yep. Rock bottom, can only go up.
Exactly. That's a good way to look at it. So just over the break, there's been a few different sort of attacks and data breaches that we've come to see. So starting off, there was the Victoria Court breach, which happened. Did it happen late? It was late December, wasn't it? Like just before the holidays.
Yeah. So the court actually made a statement on Tuesday the 2nd, but I think we caught wind of it probably the 1st, maybe even slightly before that. But the data ranges from, I'm looking at the article right now, so the data ranges from the 1st of December to 21st of December. I saw a couple things that it even goes back further than that.
Oh, do you mean as in the data that was stolen was only dated back to December, or as?
Yeah, so it was a couple months. All criminal and civil hearings recorded on the network between November 1st and December 21st may have been accessed. That does include sensitive cases. Originally, when I saw this, me and Max were kind of celebrating at the time, so we didn't look at it too much. One of the thoughts I immediately have was, okay, so what cases have been there? Obviously, they're not going to tell us what cases are there, but that sounds like it could be a state actor, depending on what the case was, or just a sophisticated attacker. It's kind of come out that I believe the employees kind of went to log into the computer, and it was typical ransomware. It just came out with a message saying you have been pwned. So typical ransomware attempt, it was double extortion as well. So they had ransomware on their systems, and then they threatened to sell it online. So that does make it sound like it's a fairly run-of-the-mill attack. They say it's likely work of Russian hackers, which kind of always is, and it's always the go-to scapegoat. But yeah, pretty run-of-the-mill, but the sensitivity of the data is really interesting. So I'm sure stuff like this has happened before, but I just think this was the closest to home one to us, where we've seen sort of court hearings. Really goes to show that no one's really safe. And it's something that I wouldn't really think of off the bat. It just goes to show how important it is to know your data and what it's worth.
Yeah, 100%. I think it brings up an interesting discussion as well, because if you're talking about, the data we're holding is fairly sensitive, what happens if a state actor tries to, or maybe not even a state actor, but say you have someone who's an international criminal, or someone who's being prosecuted in some way that's not being told to the public. If you're a state actor, or you want to somehow gain knowledge on a particular person who, say, let's use an example here. Say you're an activist who, protested against some country, right? And you did some stupid crimes, but, they had to, in the court where you're being judged, they had to pull out all of your history, certain documents where you live, all that sort of stuff. Well, maybe the country that you're protesting against didn't like that very much, right? And they then, get all these documents and they know everything about you straight away. So there's an interesting discussion to be had about, what is the importance of the data that was stolen?
Yeah, and understanding your attackers, I suppose.
And the consequences that can come from it.
A more topical, imagine if during the Ghislaine Maxwell or something, somebody went in there and they found out more of the people on the Epstein list. So that's something that's going to be released, and everybody's kind of holding their breath for who's going to be on it.
Yep.
I don't know, imagine if somebody got in and found all that out early.
Yep.
I suppose it would be a bit of a shock to the world, probably in a good way, but,
definitely in sort of a justified kind of way, I think, in that case.
Yeah. But you never know. You got to know what data you're holding.
But even if we're talking about maybe a court case that is protecting the rights of someone, right, or has to do with someone having a witness testimony on a criminal, right? imagine you're doing a witness testimony on a big, bikie gang kingpin, right? And then the data gets stolen, or maybe the bikie gang pays a group of hackers to steal the data. Suddenly they know who the witness was. You've been
I mean, same with like whistleblower cases as well, I suppose. Someone speaking out against a company, that could also be really bad. Yeah, it's a slew of stuff. It's a complete box of frogs being opened.
Cool. Well, what we'll move on to is there was another sort of attack that went on and was being talked about over the holidays, which was the St. Vincent Hospital attack. So this one, was this a ransomware attack or not, Flynn? This was just a...
No, so the data was being held for ransom, but it wasn't ransomware. So the data was stolen and they were basically threatening to publish it online. Similar to like Medibank and stuff like that. We don't know the full story yet. I'm not a massive fan of how they're currently handling it. They're basically saying... They're scouring the dark web and stuff and saying, we haven't found any of the credentials currently being used. That's good to do internally, but I don't think that's a good thing to publicly say, because it's making it sound better than what it is. You should automatically assume that the data is in the wild. Even if you can't see it's being used for 5 years, who's to know it's not going to pop up and be used 10 years from now? Yeah. Especially with hospital data that's so sensitive. We've seen over the years how valuable medical data is. It's prime target.
Yeah. And did they say that they couldn't see the data being sold? Was that what they were mentioning?
Yeah, so they basically said they can't find it on the dark web.
Okay. But that doesn't mean it's not there.
Right? No, it doesn't mean if it's been exfiltrated, it's safe to assume it's somewhere.
Yeah. Well, the places they're looking, it's not there. But,
yeah. Who knows? It could be even more of a red flag. It could be that someone sophisticated is using the data. You can't tell this. That's why there's no point in saying something like that. It's just saving face, and it doesn't actually help anyone.
Yeah, I can't remember if we learned about it in uni or not, but I definitely remember someone saying very early on into my career that data that's stolen, you can't really say, we've looked around and it's not there, so, it's not on the dark web. It's, if you don't have it, if it's been stolen, you may as well say it's completely out there.
It's the CIA triad stuff. Once it's out, the confidentiality and the integrity is it's out the window. It's completely gone. Yeah. There's no point in saying, we can't see it's on the dark web, because who knows where it is.
Yeah, and I suppose this is another one for critical infrastructure. We desperately need an overhaul in Australia, and, the cybersecurity strategy seems to imply that they have strategies to mitigate that and try and, I guess, make the security better, but the time where they put it in place can't come any sooner, really, because it seems like every month there's a new critical infrastructure either going down or being hit by a cyber attack. Like the fundamentals and the structures that need to be in place there, the foundations are clearly not there.
Yeah. So the story is still unfolding with the St. Vincent attack. So we'll give you guys an update, which, who knows, could be a year's time from now, because it's probably going to be a big investigation around it. But yeah, it's still ongoing. But as I said, and I think a lot of people don't handle incident response correctly, which I think we're going to go through a bit later anyway. But I think the information they're giving us right now is potentially misleading to people who are unaware how cyber attacks work. And yeah, I think that they could do better.
Yeah, totally agree.
But at least there is some communications, I suppose.
If you're a frequent visitor to the St. Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, then it might be a good idea to have a look at some of your old documents, or, just be on the lookout for the key signs of people trying to commit identity fraud on you, or, try and steal your identity. Worth keeping an eye out, definitely.
Yep.
I guess the next topic we're going to head to is what Flynn and I, obviously we're still fairly new in the industry, but what are some of our predictions for what's going to happen in cybersecurity in 2024? I think this is a sort of a fun topic. Nothing we say is definitely what's going to happen, or totally 100% based in reality, but it's fun to...
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Brainstorm.
Well, maybe not fun.
Maybe not fun. Maybe not fun.
Yeah. I think a big one is that I think we may see the biggest fine in Australia for cyber attacks. With the Medibank stuff still going on, I would like it to be more than a slap on the wrist. Obviously, a huge company like Medibank's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And we've seen in the past with these massive cyber attacks, they typically in their stock prices, take a big dip at the start, and then after some time they end up leveling out and even going up. We saw that with Equifax. And a big company like Medibank, I assume it's probably going to be the same, but I would like to see some actual action from the government taking place. They already did put some, I think they put a capital halt on them something. I'll look it up. It was a capital charge. Yeah, so there's a $250 million capital charge on Medibank. But yeah, with these last couple of big breaches, there could be some big fines that come into place. There was Latitude. I'm unsure if there was a Latitude fine, but there was also...
It still seems like a lot of the information regarding it is yet to go fully public. I might be wrong, but I still haven't heard a whole lot about it.
Latitude facing $50 million in fines if found negligent. That was in May, so you'd hope that would fine now. Everything's just possible, so I assume that the investigation is still going on. There was also a law firm in which I will not name because there's currently I don't know what the word is.
It's a media blackout or media.
Yeah. But there's currently one of them, but that was a big breach as well. There was some AFP agents and stuff like that were in that breach, so it was fairly sensitive. We'll see where that goes as well. So I think there'll be some big fines to come. Hopefully some action from the government. It looks like they are starting to move in the right direction, as I've covered before. But it's about actual action, I suppose, rather than just, we're going to do this.
Yeah, I think my perspective on what, we can see hopping into cyber in 2024, like Flynn said, we can see some big fines being handed out, which is, that's always, is that sort of the right way to handle it? In some cases, yes, some cases, no. But I think that, we'll definitely see some big cases of the government taking action in some way. I think that's definitely a possibility. In terms of some of the technical things going on, I have a strong feeling that we're going to see a lot more of a dependence on AI into protecting systems in the coming year. I could assume that we're going to see a lot of startups popping up that are, running a protection service or a data protection service in some way that's fully focused around using AI. I think we're going to see a lot of those popping up and popping around. I think we can safely assume that vendors for existing software are going to be trying to keep up with this. So they're going to be using AI in their own products and trying to integrate that into services that already exist. I think with Microsoft and Copilot, you can already see that a little bit. But I mean, this is going to extend out and just get bigger and bigger as the advancements in AI and computing really continue to skyrocket. We're going to see, a lot of companies bringing this forward. That's one of my big predictions is, AI, we're going to see a lot of it. It's not going to go away, which we keep saying as well. But, we're going to see it a lot more this year. And in protection, maybe even in attacks as well. I can see there being an AI that's not only taught to spit out examples of how to hack things, but maybe doing the hacking itself, right? Imagine you...
Yeah, I've seen a couple of predictions about, AI making its first, worm and stuff like that. Whether that comes to fruition, we'll see. Something that I think will be interesting around AI, I was actually reading a paper today. It was from a couple of years back in America about people's trust in systems and in AI in particular, and they found that they generally weren't trustworthy of them. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of integration to AI and there's going to be a lot of bad integration. And then, thankfully, I've already seen some regulators and stuff like that, like the European Parliament has started to release information on it. There was, information on laws, so they basically just outright banned AI in certain cases, which is good to see.
Yep.
There was also an ISO standard, I think it was 42001. Yeah, so there's ISO 42001, which is basically a framework around AI governance. One of the big parts of that, which I think is good to see, is they basically ask, do you really need AI for this?
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing we've said before is I think we see a lot of applications, and we'll continue to see a lot that are using AI, and you just kind of sit back and go, why? Why do you need AI for this? There's no point. You're just adding another attack vector. I think what will end up happening is we're going to see a flood of AI tools. Then there's going to be some sort of big incident involving AI, whether that be this year or a couple of years from now. And then I reckon the trust will plummet.
Yeah,
that's what I see. But even when the trust does plummet, I don't see AI particularly going anywhere. No. Maybe just more controls around it.
Yep.
I do want to go back. You touched on it before. I think that we might have to do a whole episode on it because I think it's a big topic. About art finds the correct way to, I suppose, punish people for having bad cybersecurity. It is actually a really good debate, I think, because as we know, you could do absolutely everything right and you can still get hacked.
That's right.
There's always some sort of risk involved with every system. And can you really say, like, what if you have the best security in the world and then you get hacked? Can you really say, hey, we're going to slap $100 million fine on you?
Yeah.
What if you did everything right?
Is that fair?
Yeah, but I think that's a question for someone in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that's a whole topic on itself.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting sort of point to think about. If you're, say, a really big company and you have really good controls in place, you're doing everything right, talking to the government, staying up to date, talking to regulators, and then you just get hit by a 1 in a trillion attack that just is the combination of everything going wrong in all your controls. Is it really fair then to put all this pressure on the company? All the employees in cyber, they're worried about their careers, like, oh, is this going to ruin everything with all this media press? And the government slaps a massive fine. The ethics behind that is a bit of a grey area, because in one case, they're losing data, which as a result is impacting end users, and that can't be allowed. But also, what else could they have done? Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, I suppose. Granted, I don't think it happens often where nobody's at fault in a cyber attack. From everything I've ever seen, that's never happened. Usually something's just dumb, but it could. It could happen.
Yeah, fun thing to think about, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe we could see a change in the frequency or the types of attacks that are happening as the economy improves or degrades. As that's something that's going to happen this year. Is our economy, it's unlikely it's just going to stay in the same state that it is now. A lot of spending going on. There's a lot of changes happening. So something that we could see is, potentially attackers are going to try and bend that in their own way. Say if the economy starts going really well, then we can expect that everyone's going to be hammered by automated texts and everything as people are getting more money to spend on things. Or, generally the economy is moving better and doing better. People are going to spend a bit more money, have a bit more money, be a bit more comfortable with letting go of it, and maybe even being a little bit careless as well. Whereas we could also see that if it's the other way, what if the economy does a big backflip this year and, New Zealand's already declared a recession? What if we see, one of them happen to us? We get hit with a recession. We could see that attacks are going to be more convincing, more strategic in the way that they're going to try and tactically persuade people to give up their money in scams. We're going to see a lot more sophistication in that sort of regard when people are, holding on tight to their money and trying to just get by. You could see that maybe attackers would be a bit more lenient. Maybe they'll do discounts on ransomware payouts. We never know. But, I think these are all things that are possible as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting topic because I think, cybersecurity's always been a thing since the start of computers, but, we haven't really seen a massive economic crash since cybersecurity. There was the 2008 America housing collapse, but, cybersecurity was a thing then, but it's not the absolute behemoth it is now, I would say.
The scam industry, that didn't really exist back then in this.
No, not that I'm aware. Granted, I was young. I was less than 10 years old, so I could have just not been aware of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I actually have no idea how that will affect cyber attacks. Maybe we don't see any difference at all. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it make people more desperate, and maybe, tech gurus will end up being bad actors. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Linus Tech Tips ends up coming.
You never know.
Cool. Well, looking back on 2023, what are some things that we can leave in the past? So what are some things that we want to leave back in 2023 and not bring up again moving forward in the future? What are some things, Flynn? I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, so I think one of my pet peeves that I've spoke about on here, and I've also spoke about in length on like LinkedIn and stuff like that, is I think a lot of people do incident response really bad.
Yeah.
As I said today, St. Vincent stuff, the Medibank stuff. I think a lot of people do cyber incident response really bad. Partially, I think it's because they're worried about, what they say, and is that going to be held in a legal sense against them?
Yep.
But I think a lot of people need to get down packed of how they're going to communicate with the public, the media, regulators, the government, about what's going on when a cyber attack hits them.
Yep.
Everybody has this attitude of, it won't happen to us, but it probably will. It's going to happen to everyone at some point, I assume, although let's hope it doesn't. But having that sort of nonchalant attitude is not going to work. You need to constantly be exercising your cyber incident response and, having those, I suppose, frameworks around it, governance frameworks for what you got to do.
Yep.
And exercising it. It's one thing having a lot of documentation, collecting dust on your shelf. And this one thing, actually exercising it, improving it. And the biggest value is exercising it just so you know what to do. Because, a lot of the time, the documents, nobody's going to be reading through a 20-page document like this word for word when they're going through an incident. But it's about kind of knowing, okay, this is what we got to do, and then referring to it rather than doing that. I think that's one thing that Australia's got to get a bit better at.
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. Communication is a massive one. It's been a lot of years now where we've seen examples of bad communication internally in companies, externally to, customers and clients, and it's just a bad practice that we need to see go away. There needs to be better communication. I think reluctancy to collaborate. I think there's a few areas where we can see that companies are being hit by a very specific kind of attack, and then that we're not learning anything. People in my company that talk to a big group of CISOs aren't hearing very much. It still seems like collaboration issues are that still exists, and it's something that we need to leave in the past and get over it, really. If we want to elevate Australia's cybersecurity altogether, then we're not going to do that by every company sticking it out on their own. That's not how it happens. Really, there needs to be forums set up, either by regulators or by the government or by, communities themselves with lots of security professionals. But there really needs to be a push for collaboration in, all areas of cybersecurity. I don't know, I'm just kind of spitballing, but, what if you were thinking, maybe financial services, it would be a good thing to start a yearly or bi-yearly forum where all of the CISOs and a select amount of security personnel meet up from all financial services companies, and it's organized by APRA or something, and there can be a space where everyone comes in and communicates their issues, their struggles, and things that they're able to easily squash and easily solutions to simple problems. And doing that, it might not do anything, but it might be really useful to maybe a small to medium business that's having a certain issue, and then you have someone else who has already fixed it. They can come and have a chat to the professionals there and tell them about ways that they can solve their own issues. Obviously, it could be a logistical nightmare, but there's I think collaboration in general needs to be a lot better.
Yeah, even on that, even if it doesn't come to anything, you talk to a CISO and it doesn't work. If you have a regulator there, that's incredibly valuable knowledge to them, because, they can then go and say, oh, well, a lot of small companies don't do this. A lot of large companies don't do this. and they can then go ahead and figure out how to attack the problem in the future, rather than, what they're saying of, we're going to uplift everyone and everyone's in the shit. So,
yeah,
where do they go from there?
That definitely makes sense. Like, imagine having at that, this imaginary conference, there's a certain issue that's hitting, every 9 out of 10 small and medium businesses, but, over 80% of large businesses have already solved some issue. Then, APRA can come in and have a talk about how to solve, something that's appearing over and over and over again. My kind of reasoning for this is, it doesn't make sense that in Australia here, an attacker can find some vulnerability and find some weakness and then just constantly use it over and over and over and over again on heaps of different companies. Like, it would make a lot more sense if, after it's used once, that everyone's able to talk and collaborate and pull each other up to the same standard, so that it doesn't have to be a cyber attack, but, maybe we could say an update of a routing table, right?
Yeah.
Something like that can be talked about and made sure that it doesn't happen. Because I'm going to talk a bit specifically. In the Optus outage, right? Telstra doesn't have the same issue, okay? They didn't have the same issue at all. Seems like they had solved whatever the problem was a long time ago. Likely the same thing with Vodafone as well. Optus, they didn't have the right stuff in place and there was issues there. If there was some collaboration between those guys, which they don't really seem too keen in doing, then something like that just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it's hard to say with something like that, just because with networking and stuff, it can be so specific. I don't know if the collaboration aspect would have worked for that specific case, even though it shouldn't have happened in general, as we've said. But I see a degree of collaboration. Like, I see, can't remember if it's the Australian government or the New South Wales government. They basically send out emails saying like, oh, this attack's going around right now, go and patch it. But it could definitely happen at a more frequent pace and better knowledge. I think that, especially with sort of bigger companies, it's very taboo to talk about, what's happening or what your vulnerabilities are. But it's just going to be more valuable to more people, I suppose.
Given
they have a decent idea.
Yeah, given there's a safe space for them to do it where they can, chat to only people who need to know, right?
Yeah,
like I
suppose
logistical issues with it, but there definitely needs to be some collaboration.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be an in-person thing, because you don't really want to have a whole database of every vulnerability of every company. That sounds even worse.
That's a nightmare if that was said to be the case.
Something that I suppose we could do better is, I think that education, which hopefully that'll be good with the podcast, but education to, a more general audience. I see constantly people I talk to that aren't in tech, who, they're quite like smart people, but they just don't see the need for a lot of cybersecurity controls. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's actually pretty good. He has the controls in place, but, he was just kind of like, why do I have to use MFA? It's so annoying. And I'm like, basically, you're going to stop 95% of attacks if you use MFA.
Yeah.
I think it's because he got a new phone and he had to basically go around all of Okta's stuff and reset everything, which can be painful. I understand that. But, that education piece and why you have to have it, I think is something that we could do better. Cybersecurity is taught to cybersecurity people, but I think it should be mandatory at some point in schooling in general as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I've sort of brought this up. I don't think I've ever discussed it in the podcast, but I went to a talk probably 6-8 months ago now. I was at a conference, and there was a panel of security experts. We're going to put in quotes. You can't see me doing it, but there's air quotes there. Security experts, and they were chatting about what are some ways that the education can be improved. And there was a general question to everyone on the panel, which is, do they think that cybersecurity knowledge should be mandatory in high school? Pretty, sort of open question there. One of the experts on the panel said, yep, and they explained why. The other one said no, and then they explained why. And the third one said no, but his explanation was because the government moves too slow and the knowledge won't be useful. And I think that is a complete gross, it's kind of just a nothing statement, really. I think that definitely the right answer to that is yes, to an extent. Like, I think there needs to be certain things that are in place that kids are learning so that they're not clicking, give me a free iPad every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can teach them the concepts of phishing and stuff like that. That, let's be honest, phishing's not going anywhere anytime soon. You don't need to be teaching them how to, I don't know, scour Wireshark logs. Like,
No.
That's just a ridiculous statement. There's key cybersecurity concepts that are going to make people so much more cyber hygienic and so much safe in the future. I can't even believe that's such a ridiculous statement. That's like saying, we shouldn't teach anyone cybersecurity because it moves so fast. It's just like, well, there's cybersecurity concepts and there's stuff. If you hit the fundamentals, as I always say, if you get the fundamentals right, you're going to be good a lot of the time. For personal people, that's often not the case because, sometimes it can be completely out of your control.
Yep.
Like how I spoke with a family member the other day that their card details were stolen. Completely not their fault as far as we know. But, teaching even just fraud, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Calling up your bank and stopping them from just freezing your card. Like, that's not difficult stuff to tell. You don't even need to have like a whole semester and take out of other classes for it. But there should just be a general education piece. I don't know, maybe it's once a term or once a year. Who knows? But to say, no, we shouldn't do it is crazy to me.
Silly. I think maybe once a term. I don't know how many people had this at their school, but I went to a public school, and what we used to do is once a month there'd be like a scripture day thing, and whatever religion you were, they had, they spent a couple hours towards the end of the day. You go and learn stuff about whatever religion you are. Why not? Why can't there be a cybersecurity thing once a term where you go and learn some stuff about new attacks? What are some things that are going on, in the world of cybersecurity? How can you make your digital footprint better? What are some ways to catch phishing emails? What makes an ad look suspicious? There's so much stuff that you can. It's not very technical knowledge, but just basic fundamentals, like you said, that would greatly introduce this stuff to children, make them enthusiastic about cybersecurity.
I think a big thing you said right there was the digital footprint stuff. That's something they did go over in our high school. I don't know if it was in classes or it was more, teachers just giving us warnings that like, what you put online stays online. And I'm glad they said stuff like that. I think a lot of people hear that and they go, yeah, okay. But, why isn't there a class around, what happens with certain people? There's that ad recently. I don't know. I doubt there's been an actual incident like it, but there's that ad where they put their children's stuff online and, they age up the child with AI and then they steal their voice and they basically use it for fraud. It's something like that where it may not be realistic, but just an education piece as to why protecting your digital footprint basically and being careful online, especially nowadays with kids being online 24/7.
Yep. So that ad is called "Don't Share Your Kids' Personal Information Without Consent." That's the name. So if you want to search it up on YouTube, "Don't Share Your Kids' Personal Information -without consent." So that video, that's a really, really good one. That's a really impactful sort of piece. I don't know how exactly realistic it, specifically would be, but
it might be 5 years from now. Who knows? We see the voice cloning stuff happen. Who knows? Maybe it could be. I haven't heard of an incident now from it. I doubt there is one, but you never know.
Yeah,
is the point.
That's a really, really good one to watch. It's a good one to watch with your family. Show the kids, make sure that when they know that they're posting pictures of them on Instagram or on, little videos on TikTok or whatever, that data, that information can be taken and manipulated very, very easily. That your digital footprint's is going to be massively exposed by rapidly uploading videos of yourself that you can't get rid of.
Yeah, and even from us, from the listeners listening right now, just have that discussion with people about why cybersecurity is important. Because even I think people are starting to get a little bit nonchalant because they hear about it so much in the news. It's the cyber fatigue. It's also something I see often is people basically go, oh, well, because my data's out there, what's the point in even bothering to try and protect it? Because it's out there anyway.
Yeah.
Which obviously is terrible because certain data is more important, and if there's more data out there, it's more likely, and you could probably write a whole essay on why that's a very dangerous perspective to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, the education piece, I think, is a big one.
I'm going to link that video in the description of this episode, so if you want, just check out the description, and the link to the video will be there. Otherwise, yeah, go on YouTube, look up "Don't share your kids' personal information, space, without consent." That, it's a really good one to sum it up. Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.